Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Undersecretary Miller, I have a lot of questions to relate to Dodd-Frank implementation and data security, but I'd be remiss if I did not first raise the issue of housing finance reform that is a critical issue before this country. As you know, in the State of the Union, the President called on Congress to send him legislation that protects taxpayers from footing the bill for a housing crisis ever again and keeps the dream of home ownership alive for future generations. I just want to ask you, as a representative of the administration here, to confirm that the President has indeed called on Congress to send him housing finance reform legislation and that this is a top priority which we need to handle now.
Thank you for the question. I could not agree with you more. This has been a priority of the Treasury since the day I arrived to make sure that we're planning for a safe and stable housing finance system. As you know, last summer, the President articulated 4 important points. One, that we need to design a system that brings more private capital back into the housing finance market. 2, that we design something that winds down the GSEs as they performed and makes sure that we are protecting the taxpayers in a future housing finance system. That we provide broad access to credit for credit-worthy borrowers who want to own a home. And that we also make sure that we provide adequate financing for rental options in this country. We are very heartened that the improvement in the housing market, the recovery we're seeing in housing prices, the slowing or diminution of loan delinquencies and foreclosures is giving us the opportunity and the platform now to move forward with housing finance reform. And we very much look forward to working with members of this committee on a bipartisan piece of legislation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I just wanted to get that out there so that it's clear that this is a priority, and I appreciate your emphasis on that and your work on this. My next question really isn't a question, it's more of a statement about the Volcker Rule, and the reason is because there's so much that I want to ask, there's just not time for me to get into it right here. So I'm simply going to make a statement, and then I will, with follow-up questions on the record, engage with each of you on the Volcker Rule and what we've seen. The concern I have is one that I know was raised yesterday in hearings and that has been raised significantly, which is that I think we're just beginning to see the unintended consequences of the Volcker Rule. And as I mentioned in my opening statement, I'm a little bit baffled that after 3 years of work on the Volcker Rule, none of the agencies foresaw the unintended consequence related to CDOs that was fixed, but I'm not sure it was been completely resolved and properly yet, but at least the issue is the concern about unintended consequences with the Volcker Rule and the problems that we are now seeing highlighted there with the multiple regulators having to coordinate with each other and fully consider all of the dynamics of a very major rule such as this. So I'm going to leave it at that right now and not ask you to engage with me right now because I got a lot of other questions to try to get to, but I will, with questions on the record, be engaging with you. For the next question, Chair White, I'd like to turn to you. I understand that FSOC is evaluating whether and how to consider asset management firms for designation as SIFIs. As a part of that evaluation process, the FSOC asked the Office of Financial Research to draft a study of the assessment of the asset management industry. And unfortunately, the OFR report failed to fully take into account the perspectives of and the data from the SEC and market participants, as I see it. The asset management industry is squarely within the SEC's jurisdiction and core expertise. What additional work and data gathering do you believe should be done to further understand the asset management industry and to achieve the right result in this context?
I should say, I guess at the outset, the SEC is very actively working in the FSOC setting with our fellow agencies in following, up on, concentrating exactly on those issues. We were certainly we provided technical assistance to OFR before that study excuse me, was completed, commented extensively, some of those comments taken, some of those not, as is usual, but agreed to disagree on a number of things. So I think it's very important that we have complete data, complete expertise applied to all these issues and focus on what differences there are in terms of asset managers, which are obviously based on an agency, model, business model. But I think that discussion is going on.
Well, thank you very much. And one more question. This goes to both Chairman White and Chairman Weech. I have a lot more questions, but this will be the last one I get to get out here. And that is that over the last year, I've repeatedly expressed my view that the SEC and the CFTC to move in a more coordinated way with regard to Dodd-Frank implementation and cross-border initiatives for derivatives. Some argue that the CFTC's implementation is largely complete, while the SEC has a fair amount of work left to be done. As the landscape for Title VII continues to develop, what are the concrete steps that your agencies are taking to ensure coordination from both rulemaking and compliance perspectives?
Let me just, I guess, take that first, which is that, A, we are prioritizing the completion of our rules in 2014 for Title VII. Our staffs are in pretty much constant contact about implementation issues. We're also actually looking at the possibility of accelerating on some issues that don't require full rulemaking. And I think we were also engaged at the principal level, which I think is very important as well.
Thank you. Mr. Weegin?
Thanks, Senator Crapo. I agree with Senator White. It's a priority for our agency to coordinate closely with the SEC. At a personal level, I've been involved in that since joining the agency. Of course, as you alluded to, our cross-border guidance is currently in place, but there are still some issues that continue to arise related to it, and we continue to consult with the SEC as those arise. And to give you a specific example, there's some interest in some subsequent staff advisories concerning our guidance. We're hosting a Global Markets Advisory Committee meeting at the Commission next week, and the SEC will be participating in that meeting, as will some foreign regulators from both the FCA in the United Kingdom and the European Commission in Brussels. So we'll have regulators from around the globe, including the SEC, providing their input, all in an effort to, as you say, coordinate as best we can.
Thank you. I have a number of additional questions, but I'll submit those for the record, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to working with the witnesses here on those. Thank you.